friends. Welcome back to the Tango Banter. I am Yelizaveta. It's been a minute. It's been a few hot minutes, actually. And it's not something I was anticipating. Sometimes you have to sort of allow a stepping back from something that you really love in order to gain a different perspective when you come back to it. This is kind of what happened with the podcast, and a lot of the travel that I've had to do definitely contributed to me not being able to sustain my momentum. But I think it also just needed to happen. Similarly, with my relationship with Buenos Aires, as I've mentioned before, I found that I had to step away from Buenos Aires for a while. And 8 years ago, when I went there, as I was leaving, I believed I was never going to be back because I really was done with tango and done with Buenos Aires. And I just was over it all. But here I am 8 years later, and I went back to Buenos Aires and had a very different experience. This episode is not about the truth of Buenos Aires. It's about my personal experience, which I know is influenced very much by who I am, the fact that I'm a woman, that I am a leader primarily, that I'm white, that I'm Russian, like all of these things influence how I view Buenos Aires and the kinds of experiences I end up having there. And you will find that you might talk to someone else, of course, and they'll have something very different, that our experiences are really shaped by both our personality traits, but even like how much money you have and how tall you are. Those things end up playing a huge role in what Buenos Aires feels like to you. So when I was getting ready for this trip, I really wanted to prove some things to myself that felt like completely off limits to me the last time I was there. And there were certain things I was very nervous about. And looking back, it's interesting because it seems so strange that those are the things that mattered and made me so anxious. But that's kind of where we are whenever we face those kinds of challenges inside of ourselves, that they seem like it's impossible. So to me, the idea that I would be leading at La Viruta, for example, was crazy. That I would be able to dance as a leader at a venue like El Beso or Vija Malcolm. Like, my story as a dancer revolved around me being a follower in Buenos Aires. And here I was going back as a leader, and it was really scary to even consider, would I be kicked off the dance floor for wearing flats? This was something on my mind because those are the kinds of things that happened the last time I was there. I remember clearly being downgraded to a different seat based on the shoes I came in wearing. So I also had a lot of expectations or dreams and fantasies about dancing with certain leaders, certain specific men in tango that I know are in Buenos Aires. So, this fulfillment, this possibility of going to Buenos Aires and facing the fears and maybe perhaps getting the fulfillment of dancing with certain leaders and having that experience of being validated. This is what my mind was consumed with as I was preparing for my trip. Now, as I was getting closer to the date of my departure, I had this random thought about the idea of dancing with certain women that I respected in Buenos Aires. And it was the first time that I actually gave any thought to the women that I respected, because I realized that as difficult, as challenging as it was for me to imagine dancing with my heroes when it came to the male leaders, it was even more daunting and intimidating to think about the women because my opinion, my perspective of the women was that you got to be so good to have access to those followers that there's just no way. There's no way. They're like goddesses up there in the clouds and I am a mere mortal. Like that was my perspective that the best I can do is just hope that I get to dance with some of these awesome dudes. And it struck me how much I could not imagine connecting with the women in Buenos Aires because I was so once again intimidated. Even though I've spent a lot of my time in the past years since coming back developing community with women and working with a lot of women. So, on a personal level, I feel very much at ease and not at all in competition with women, but a lot of actually camaraderie these days. But when it came to going to Buenos Aires, all of those past feelings of comparison and competition, they all kind of came back, and it was surprising to realize that that was still there. So I didn't spend much time thinking about the women, but I spent a lot of time nervous about my wearing flats at the Milonga because I thought perhaps nobody will want to dance with me because I'm wearing flats. And which is not true. The first thing that happened when I first landed in Buenos Aires and I was taken to what I was told was one of the most traditional milongas right now that are kind of where the locals go, which is a Wednesday night Rodriguez Milonga. I looked, first thing when I walked in, I looked to see if I can spot anybody wearing flats. And sure enough, I saw at least 2 to 3 women wearing flats, which was such a relief to me right off the bat. So I felt a lot easier right away. And then the thing I was afraid of happening, the thing that I was my biggest fear, finally did happen. And it's kind of amazing how it happened because it's very revealing of the culture of tango and just this crossroads that we're all at in terms of our what we choose to do in our dance. So I was at a milonga where there was a milonguero who I really, really admire, and we've danced before. And he pulled me aside at a milonga and he was like, "What are you wearing?" He looked at my shoes and he said, "Oh no, I don't dance with girls who wear shoes like that." And when I said, "Why?" he said, "Because you can't feel the floor. You only have 2 points of contact." And then he just walked away and we didn't dance again. And I didn't really know what to do with that right away. It felt wrong in many ways, but I really was split. I didn't know whether the story needs to be that this is the only person for whom I change my shoes, or that I really don't compromise and only wear the shoes that I want to wear. There was definitely a part of me that was like, I think you're being a little stubborn. Like you can let loose a little bit on your dogmatic attachment to dancing a certain way. And you need to understand that certain people have different approach to tango, and these people were here first. he was a dancer before you and he knows better. And just because you know different doesn't negate that he's right, perhaps. So why not make an exception and change your shoes to dance with this person? Because what do you get in exchange for that? Like your little sacrifice of just putting a different pair of shoes. In exchange, you get to dance with this legendary leader who is like so amazing. Everybody wants to dance with him. You wouldn't sacrifice this little piece of your pride to dance with someone like that? That was the conversation in my mind. And it lasted about a week. I really went back and forth on it. But the longer I thought about this, the more I was coming to this realization that the whole situation needs to be considered, not just whether his opinion, his belief is legitimate or not. Number one was this thought that, wait, who are you to tell me what I feel in my body? Like, why is that okay still? Why is that on limits for anyone, but particularly for a man, to tell a woman, hey, you don't feel the floor. You only have 2 points of contact. And I know that better than you. So that was the first layer of me coming to see this as like, okay, no, I'm not okay with this. I'm not okay with you telling me how I feel in my body because you know it better than I do and I'm in my body. And then using that as a reason for not dancing with me. The second layer that I realized was that we were at a milonga, and one of the foundational rules of milonga is you don't give feedback. So to feel that this person did not have that level of respect for me as a dancer to give me that kind of feedback in the context of a milonga. And of course, I thought, I wonder, does he do that to other women? Is he like that with everyone, or is it just me? There's that question of like, who do you think I am actually? What gives you the permission in this public setting to make comments about my choice of footwear? That was the bigger context that came through. So, what did I decide to do ultimately? I decided not to change my shoes, and I let go of the desire to dance with this person, even though he's one of the best dancers there is. And it took a while for me to accept, not because there was this feeling of loss, like now that I'm not going to dance with this person, there's going to be a lack of some kind, but more that it took me a while to accept that I really can, that at this point in my dance, I really don't feel tied to making any compromises to dance with anyone, no matter what level they are. And the reason why I feel this way is because there's so many other opportunities and other doorways into other places where tango really meets you where you're at, not the other way around. Now, my story, my experience with this tango dancer is not an isolated case. I had a conversation with another tango friend of mine who's been living in Buenos Aires now for at least a decade, if not more. And he was telling me that over the past few years, there's been a rise in women dancing as leaders. And the reason is not because there's not enough leaders, because it's Buenos Aires. There's plenty of leaders. But because leaders would ignore women when they chose to wear flats. And because certain women did not want to change their shoes to be danced with, they insisted on being comfortable and dancing in flats, they chose to lead instead. So I was asking my friend whether he believes this to be the case, whether he believes it's like that. And he was like, yeah, of course, because I do that. Like when I go to the Milonga and if a woman is wearing flats, I'm not going to ask her. And so I'm thinking, wow, you're not even going to ask me? But that's the cultural reference point that I think we're all becoming aware of, that there's this clashing between certain beliefs and certain values. So for men in Buenos Aires, I guess it is very much part of the dance for them to dance with a woman who's wearing heels. That the definition of tango is contained in that. But it's definitely obvious that women as a whole do not want to collectively be required to look a certain way and to wear heels. So the choice to wear flats is this kind of quiet form of rebellion that's been going on in Buenos Aires for the past few years. And I realized that this whole story that I'm living and I've just experienced in Buenos Aires is so much bigger than me. It's the right time, I think, to become aware of the fact that there's so many of us and that this is not a phase. This is a gradual but permanent change to the culture of tango. So the fact that I got rejected by a male dancer did not really sting that much because what had happened was I got plugged in to a group of women who met up for practice several times a week. And the main place where we congregated was La Maleva, which if you are going to Buenos Aires or if you are in Buenos Aires and you have not checked out La Maleva, I highly recommend that you do. It is my home away from home. It's the place that I keep returning to. Mariana Dragone, who runs La Maleva, hosts classes throughout the week. And there's a weekly practica on Fridays during the summer where they'll have a guest teacher typically and then a practica that does not end very late. So you still can go to La Veruta afterwards. But I spent many, many hours in that space, and I think it's one of the best floors and best vibes in Buenos Aires. So I highly recommend you check them out. I have linked their Instagram account in the show notes. Now, there's a particular teacher, Renata Tegel, that I also will mention in the show notes if you're interested in her. She has gathered a dynamic group of women around her who meet twice a week to practice leading. And so I spent most of my time and some of my best dancing happened with this group of women. So when I was in that state of mind trying to decide whether was going to say yes or no to this milonguero. On the one hand, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, of course you need to change your shoes because, this is Buenos Aires. When else are you going to get a chance to dance with someone like him? But then the longer I hesitated making that decision, the more I found that I was enjoying my dancing with these women who just didn't have all those demands on me. I just felt so much more at ease that I come in and there's no pressure to look a certain way or to be of a certain level. So ultimately, this is why I didn't really feel that disappointed about me not being able to dance with this dancer anymore because what was offered in its place was so much more fulfilling and interesting at this point in my dance. The icing on the cake and the cherry on top was that I did get to dance with some incredible women that I've admired for many years and never even considered the possibility that they would want to dance with someone like me. And those dances were so much more special than the validation that I think I would have gotten if I just continued to try to get dances with some of these tangueros. Ultimately, I don't have to dwell on this and get jaded and seethe about it. Because the truth of the matter is, what really happened is this person has certain values, and I have different values, and our values don't overlap in some ways. But that's okay because he can go on and he can dance with the people that he believes make him happy in his experience. And I can do the same. There's just as much for me. This idea of that there's not enough, that somehow you have to be a certain level, you have to get to a certain place. There's no requirement for us to hold on to that anymore. We don't have to reach for that validation. That's the experience that I would love for everyone to have, this feeling of enough, but more than anything is that if I can say no to something like this, you can too. You really can follow your intuition and not compromise. There's so many other ways to experience yourself as a dancer within the world of tango now. And if you're a woman, you don't have to seek your validation from men anymore. There's so many amazing female leaders out there. So these are some of my initial reflections on my trip to Buenos Aires. There's more to come, but in the meantime, I am wishing you happy holidays, happy new year. I hope I see some of you in the new year. And until next time, ciao.